right here, I'll take a tray like this here, fill up all my spots. You're gonna make an indentation. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna wet this. Take my little bitty basil seeds, tiny. I put them in there as well. I would start planting seeds for the spring in January or February. Start, and I would come and do that same process for each one of these. Then I top it with a dome. Top it with a dome. When I put the dome on top of here, this helps create its own humidity. So the soil is going to be a little warm. The water is in there. There's active life happening when the seed is going to create some heat, which then is going to create some moisture. And once I can spray this, keep it nice and moist for the very beginning of the seedlings. And I put it on, what I have here is a little heat mat, just to keep the underside of the soil warm, so the seeds have some, almost like a incubator. Depending on the variety of seeds, like this basil here, germinates between 5 and 30 days. So anytime between a week from now and a month from now, I should see some growth. And then after I've gotten 4 or 5 true leaves, which would be these leaves here, are actual true leaves. If you can see down here, this was one of the seedling leaves that was down here. So that come off. But once you get a few true leaves like this, then the plant is ready to be hardened off, which is where we take it outside for a couple of hours, for a day or two, before we're actually ready to bring it all the way outside. If you just bring your plants directly outside from the grow room and put it in the ground, it will most likely die of shock because it's not used to that, the strength of the sun, the wind, or the cool. So you gotta harden them off. But this is where things start, and you don't need much. These are T5 fluorescent lights. When I'm starting my seedlings, I will bring these lights down pretty close, damn near sometimes right on top, and I'll leave them on 24 hours a day until I've got quite a bit of growth. Then they need to be transplanted out of these little pods and into the solo cups or into the bigger pots. Once they're in the bigger pots, you can change the light cycle to 16 hours on, 18 hours off. Keep it in a vegetative state. You don't want things to just start popping into flower when they're in the basement and you're not ready to take them outside. But yeah, this is where it all starts, in a 9x3 space that I built, me and a friend built, and I've kept going with these minimal lights. You don't need a big setup to get some good growth going. These are some of the babies that started in January, February in the basement that have now come up outside. They've been hardened off, meaning I brought them outside, kept them here in the shade for a few hours, then I bring them back downstairs. Next day, bring them back out, a few more hours, bring them back in. Last day, you can bring them out and let them sit. But we've got all kind of stuff. Tomatillos, these will be habaneros. And like you see when I planted that basil, or when you plant the carrots, you're putting more than one in per container because they can grow. And it helps save yourself some space. Here I've got some tomato plants. And if you look in there, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tomato plants right in this little space. And then once you start thinning them out and you put them in the ground, they'll all catch up. So tomatoes, tomatillos, habaneros, jalapenos. What do we got here? Some more collards that need to go in the ground. This is another pepper. Some collards. So once I get them here and they've been hardened off, and they're ready to go in the ground, that's when we find a home in the garden, dig a hole just as big, maybe a little bit bigger than the pot, gently work it out, and in the ground it'll go like this. When you see this here, this is a good sign. This is all root growth. They could be a little whiter. The whiter they are, the healthier they are. Ain't that a But I like to see the root growth, and I like to see it wrapping around. That means it's trying to continue to grow. Tomatillos need, these are peppers, need as much sunlight as possible. So these would go in my garden. I know that this part of the garden here doesn't get much sunlight in the day because of how the sun comes across the house. I get direct sunlight in the morning coming through here, then I lose it in mid-morning and it comes back around 11. So I would plant my peppers here, over on this side, or where I have my hemp plants as well. This is where my garden gets the majority of the sun. It's gonna get some in the morning, in the early morning, and then once it crests here, it'll get all of the sun throughout the day until it dips behind the trees. Peppers, tomatoes, eggplant, any of these plants with big fruits like that need a lot of sunlight. So you wanna make sure that you keep those things where they're gonna get the most sunlight. Collards, kale, leafy greens like that, lettuce, that stuff can be done in a more shaded area so it doesn't need as much direct sunlight. From start to finish, from seed to eating some collard or eating some peppers is probably about 8 months. If I started in January, by July, or even, with these collards, even in a couple weeks. So with the collards, you can get them sooner, but the pepper is going to take a little bit longer. But most of the things, 6 to 8 months, you can start eating stuff. And then the collards you harvest all through summer and into that after the first frost in November.